Hello, and welcome to our latest episode of Vixen Voices. I am your co-host, Taylor Lane.
I'm Kim, and we're live from the Bill Austin studio in downtown Phoenix. And it seems like my mic is actually working this week, so that is very exciting. We don't have to MacGyver it so that I can use the other mic that's on the other side of the table. I can just talk.
No more number one innovation. It's just innovative in and of itself. Thank you, ASU. We appreciate you.
Thank you for the functional mics. We love that.
So today, our whole episode, we decided to do it themed because, honestly, our productions are better when they're themed.
Very
Shocker. But because it is Black History Month for February, we decided to feature prominent and interesting Black female artists from all across the decades in music. So we're very excited about them and talking about them today.
Yes, it is, like you said, it's Black History Month, which is very exciting. When I was in high school, we had this morning announcement show, and for Black History Month, once a week, they would do, a special, few-minute clip about some, iconic figure in Black history, and that was always really fun, so.
Yeah. Also, as some recommended viewing, I'm a really big fan of Drunk History, just as a side note.
Yes.
They did an episode recently on the, Little Rock 9, which were basically these kids who were the first kids to ever go to integrated school in Little Rock, Arkansas, and it kind of explains all the turmoil they had to go through. But a couple years ago, I want to say back in either the 80s or 90s, when Oprah had her TV show, they actually brought some of the bullies on air to apologize publicly to the Little Rock 9, and Bill Clinton also gave all of the members of the Little Rock 9 Congressional Medals of Honor, which is really cool. So,
That is really cool.
But can you imagine apologizing for your racism publicly on Oprah? That's intense.
That is intense. I mean, seems oddly topical almost even. When did this happen that they were on air with Oprah?
Sometime in the 90s.
Okay, so that's more than 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Right, and still to this day, we have people doing stuff like that, and they don't even make public apologies.
Yeah, the blackface scandal right now.
Oh God, I don't even want to think about.
It's from the 1996 was in the episode.
1996. I see. Okay. All right. I mean, it's just it makes me think almost of, do you remember, the whole, I don't want to get into this really because I don't really want to talk about it, but the whole Covington Catholic story, and how the kid, whatever his name is, I don't remember what his name was. I remember not, really paying attention.
His last name was Sandman.
Yes, I remember that. I don't remember his first name, but the kid, Sandman, went on with somebody from ABC.
Oh,
no, NBC.
Savannah Guthrie.
Somebody from NBC, and was I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it like that. And, he seemed very...
He's I had as much right to be there, I was just standing there. And in his defense, maybe he was, and he just, was a confused teenager at the wrong place at the wrong time and got caught off guard in video, and that needs to be considered, but...
It's such a weird...
He looked smug, and I know maybe he didn't mean to come across that way, but he looked smug in that video.
Yeah, I don't know. That whole story is just a hot mess.
It is a hot mess.
It's a hot mess.
Because even The Atlantic was publishing articles about it. They're no one knows what happened there because you and me and everyone else reading this article right now was not there. There are so many facets of everything that happened for this story to make it take place.
There's so many videos coming out and that kind of a thing of other things that were going on
the
at
Black
the same
Hebrew
rally.
Israelites, which are a radical group.
It was just such a mess.
It's
such a mess.
But anyway, let's talk about Tracy Chapman because I love Tracy Chapman.
What a segue right there.
It really is. Let me say this about Tracy Chapman. So, in my defense as an 8-year-old, Tracy can be used as a boy name. And when I heard Fast Car on the radio, I actually thought that Tracy Chapman was a man for a very long time until one day I actually started doing research and realized I was oh, she's a girl. My bad. But also, I don't know if any of you know there's a comedian online named Chris Fleming, and he has a video called "I'm Afraid to Talk to Men." It's a singing video.
Oh,
He's I'm afraid to talk to men, and it's that's a mood. But also, he's I can only talk to men for a couple minutes, but then I know I'm gonna bring up Tracy Chapman or Liza Minnelli or Stevie Nicks, and it's I don't know how to talk to them. Because he loves Tracy Chapman so much.
I love Chris Fleming. Chris Fleming is so funny. He's so funny. Because the whole thing is I was raised in a household with all women, and I don't know how to talk to men.
It's so good. But something interesting about her, personally, is that she went to college in Massachusetts, and she actually has a BA in anthropology and African studies.
Yeah, and she went to Tufts, which is a very good university, like a very, especially for history related.
I don't know anything about East Coast University.
No,
so.
I'm from the East Coast, and not only that, but my best friend in high school was a major history buff, so I know way too much about the history programs specifically, or history-related majors of Northeast universities.
Interesting. But she's very intelligent, and it talks about how she did a lot of performances for kind of social activism. Like, she performed at, like, the 70th birthday anniversary of Nelson Mandela, for example, and she's performed for different benefits for AIDS and HIV-related causes. So she's very in there. She's active.
She's an amazing woman. And just a side note about Tufts, because I just remembered this and it made me laugh. So I'm sure many of you, when you were juniors and seniors in high school, pretty much any time after you took the SAT, you started receiving mail from colleges.
Oh yeah, so much
flyers,
mail.
You know, all these like brochures and things that are like, please spend $50 to apply to our school. Thanks. So, as a way of letting me know that an admissions representative would be coming to my high school to talk, Tufts sent me a small postcard piece of marketing, right? Like a postcard, you know, so a single, like, I don't know, 3x5 piece of paper that said in big bold letters, Tufts is coming, with a picture of their mascot, and their mascot is an elephant. Okay? And the elephant, I don't know what his name is. I wish that I did. But it's just like the elephant, and he's like walking down the stairs, like towards the camera. And it says Tufts is coming. And it is the most ominous piece of mail I have ever received in my entire life. It is terrifying. It is like I was like going through, I was like, oh yeah, you know, like St. Olaf's College, you know, like whatever. I've never heard of this university, whatever. You know, make one up, you know, like, oh yes, I got a piece of mail from, you know, like University of Maryland, you know, like I don't want to go there. And then this in the pile of mail, and I was like, whoa, okay, cool.
He's coming.
He's coming.
He's coming.
Stop.
At least that's better. We had a college visit when I was in high school from UNR, and they sent us the email. They said, oh, so-and-so representative is going to be at your college from UNR at this day at this time, but it was sent at 5 o'clock the day after the person was there, so nobody went to the meeting.
That's so funny.
And everybody got the email at the same time, like everyone in my school, and they're like,
I will say,
hello?
no Nevada schools came to my high school to try and recruit.
Oh, really? Shocker.
Not a single one.
Well, they want us to go to in-state because they want us to stay trapped in Nevada.
Oddly, BYU did come to my high school.
There's no Mormons on the East Coast. New Jersey.
There are Mormons on the East Coast, but there are certainly no Mormons in my high school. Not a single one, as far as I know. Which is, I knew most of the people that went to my high school. That's not fair. I knew almost everyone in my grade, and like a great number of people not in my grade.
But was it mostly like Catholic, or what was like the main religion practiced? Jews, right? I forgot.
Interestingly, Judaism, which is really funny because watching the Jewish kids talk to the BYU admissions officer is one of the funniest experiences I've ever had the opportunity to witness in my life.
Interesting.
Because they were all just standing there while like the BYU admissions representative is talking about, you know, like the Church of Latter-day Saints, and they're all just kind of nodding like, yeah, tell us more, please.
That's so interesting. Yeah, we didn't get any visits from BYU, even though we're geographically closer, but
interesting.
What are you going to do?
Interesting. No, I guess, you know, those Mormons. But anyway, complete unrelated tangent. I love talking about college mail, though, because it makes me laugh. It really does. Especially because my mom is a marketing person. And I don't know a lot about marketing, but she knows a lot about marketing. And, like, mail marketing is a very effective way of doing it if you're not, like, bombarding someone. And I would get mail from the same universities, like, once a week. Sometimes more than once a week.
Me too.
And I would just throw it out. Because I was so over
for UNR,
it.
they had, like, a $99 round trip where you could fly up, they would pay for it, and you could stay, like, overnight in one of the dorms and then just, like, go home the next day. And so they would have that go on, like, once a week for, like, 7 weeks straight. So every week for like 2 months I got emails or mail about, hey, do you want to fly up to UNR and check out the campus? And I was like, no.
My favorite, California schools recruit very heavily from the East Coast because duh. And so I would get mail from like USC, and UCLA, and like
Those
UC.
are good schools, though.
Well, I mean, I had a good SAT score. What can I
Mm.
say? But USC, UCLA, UC Berkeley, Stanford. Like I would get these mails, and then they're like, "Come to our open house this weekend." And I'm like, "Ah, yes. Let me just get on a plane tomorrow and come to LA."
There was a
Good
girl
plan.
from Ohio that was in one of my tours here at ASU when I was first checking out the campus. She flew all the way here from Ohio
Oh, and
to check out the
I
school.
flew places to look at schools. I flew to Austin to look at the University of Texas. I flew to Boulder to look at the University of Colorado. I flew out here to visit ASU before I even applied. That's not true. I applied before I
Decided
ASU
to go here.
Yeah, before I decided to go here, before I really cemented like everything that I wanted to do. And so like it's not like I was opposed to traveling to look at schools, but when schools would send me mail on like a Wednesday that's like, "Oh, we're having an open house this weekend," and they're on the other side of the country, I can't get from here to there cheaply in that time span. And I'm not about to drop $600 to
On a
spend a
flight.
day at UCLA.
No, it's not worth
Just
it.
not happening.
Anyway, though, but I'm excited. Fast Car's a good song to cry to, and I hope that you cry in a good way, not in a sad way.
I hope that you cry. Taylor Lane, 2019.
It's refreshing. Sometimes it's good to simp, okay? I'm
Absolutely.
not apologizing.
All right, well, a very long tangent aside, here is Tufts graduate Tracy Chapman.
That's a good 9-year-old looking out the window thinking about life song.
It is. It's one of those songs that you would listen to. I did this all the time in high school. I took the bus, okay, all 4 years of high school. My freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year, because, one, in New Jersey, you don't get your driver's license until 17. I don't know if we're the only state that does that, but if we're not the only state, we're one of, like, 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
The vast majority of states let you drive when you're 16 because, duh. And also, I think some states let you drive at 14 or 15, and those are like the farming states because
those are
it's
the
like
yees.
tractors.
Get on the tractor, boy. I don't care.
The yees.
The yees. That's really mean to say about the entire southern half of the country.
The entire South.
But I mean,
it's not the South. It's just like, farmers.
we know who we're talking about. You know who we're talking about. We don't need to spell it out for you.
I don't know. I always feel bad talking about the South because I feel like, I'm a northerner. I can't talk about the South.
And I'm from the Southwest. I have nothing in this. Although my state was created for this Civil War effort for the Union side.
A whole lot of the states out here were established just so that we could be like, well, that's a non-slavery state.
Yeah.
So there.
Well, not Nevada history. We had the Comstock lode, which was this like giant silver mine, and President Lincoln was like, we can use silver to make bullets and other weapons for the Union, and so he's like, let's make Nevada on our side, and we're like, yeah, and now we're battle-born, and that's like that's on our flag. So,
Wait.
and our like it's our like state slogan. Every state's got a slogan. That's ours.
Yes. I don't actually know what New Jersey's slogan is, but anyway. So in New Jersey, you can't get your license until you're 17, and my birthday is kind of late in the year, I guess, for people who are like I was born in July, so the cutoff, at least in New Jersey, I think this is pretty universal though, is the end of September.
Mm-hmm.
So I only missed that by like 2.5 months. So I am definitely amongst the younger people in our grade, I guess. I don't want to call it a grade because it's not a grade anymore because we're in college, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
College. That's my, Jersey coming out. But, so I never bought a car because I would have only had it for like a year. I knew that I was going out of state for school and that I wasn't going to live at home. And that most schools also didn't let freshmen have cars on campuses. Obviously, ASU works differently than that, but quite frankly, it's like a 3-day drive if you barely stop from New Jersey to here. So hard pass on driving out here with a car. So I just never bought a car, so I was taking the bus all 4 years of high school, and I would sit there, and I would look out the window and put on, like, I remember, I think it was last week, I was talking about how much I love Hot Fuss by The Killers, and it's because that is the perfect album to look dramatically out a window on a bus.
It's just a good album for anything, really.
I mean, truly, it is. I mean, somebody told me comes on, and it's a bop.
You're happy, you're sad, you want to be uplifted, you want to feel bad about yourself, all
of
encompassing, because the lyrics can be interpreted any way that you're feeling.
Exactly. It's fantastic. Thank you, Killers, for
Very
that.
Cool.
Also, on the note of the Killers, since we were talking about Mormons earlier, why are there so many bands
from Las Vegas that are
from
started
Las
by
Vegas
Mormons?
started by Mormons? I mean, let's talk about this, right? Like, Brendan Urie was a Mormon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Although he's not anymore, yeah.
Is the Neon Trees guys from Vegas?
They're from California, SoCal.
Still Mormons.
An alternative rock band.
And
you have Imagine Dragons, all Mormon, I think, for the most part. And then...
what I love about the Neon Trees guy, though, is that... and the Killers, too, right? Yes, they're Mormon? Or am I mixing them up with someone else?
The Killers are Mormon. Neon Trees, literally every member but the lead singer is Mormon.
But what I was going to say, what I love about Neon Trees is that they released their first album. It went really well. Their debut album did super well.
Animal was famous. A bop.
Animal is a bop. It's just
an
iconic song. I love the Neon Trees, and not just Animal. Like I've listened to most of the music they put out. They're great. So everyone except the lead singer is Mormon, right? So after this great first album, first tour, all that stuff, they're getting like all this press attention, all that stuff. People love them, and the Neon Trees singer is like, surprise, I'm gay.
Well, for a long time, he was like, I'm gay and I'm Mormon, I'm not ashamed of it. And everyone's like, okay, cool, like, weird flex, but okay. And then eventually he's like, I can't do it anymore.
But what I love about it is that, like, he put the other members of the band kind of in a position where, like, what are they going to do about it? Like, he's the one that's making them all their money. Like, they can't just be like, oh, we're kicking you out of the band, because that would be...
Well, they I guess they're really, like, one of, like, the more open-minded Mormons. Not all Mormons are homophobic inherently.
No, of course not.
So they're like, we love you for who you are. We just don't agree with if you were to act on those...
Right.
Those instincts.
I remember one of the interviews I read, it was like, well, yeah, it goes against our doctrine, but he's our friend, and we care about him, and we support him, and that kind of a thing. And I just think that's so funny. And I'm so proud of him for that, because that's a very difficult thing to go through.
For sure.
I'm a religious LGBT person, and I'm not religious anymore, but I was a religious LGBT person. And there's a lot of conflict that comes with that inherently, especially if you're in a more conservative church. Yeah. So it's an interesting
And because
thing.
Mormonism is as much a culture as it is a religion, I think it makes it a little bit more intense. It's more unified, and more people in the Mormon community know each other, I think, like, differently than what you would say. Like you could have two Catholics on opposite ends of a city, and they wouldn't know each other because there's so many Catholics.
There are a lot of us.
But you have Mormons, and, like, Mormons, like, oh yeah, I know this guy. He's my cousin, second cousin, twice removed. And you're like, how do you know this person? Anyway, but to Tina Turner, who is going to be our next artist, we're going to play a song by her called "Rock Me Baby," which was interestingly written by Jimi Hendrix, which is really cool.
I love that.
I was really interested. I started getting into her kind of biography of how she started singing, and basically she didn't want to change her name. Her original name, birth name, is Anna Mae Bullock, which is what she used to go by when she started her career when she was like 17.
Mm-hmm.
And she met this guy named Ike Turner, and she joined his band called the Kings of Rhythm and got involved with him, and then they started dating. They got married in 1962, but he was extremely physically abusive and kind of wanted her to change her identity and just, very physically violent with her. She actually attempted suicide in 1968, attempted a drug overdose. But finally, she was able to file for divorce in 1976. And it's interesting. I don't know. Abuse is hard. I've never personally gone through anything like that, but I think it makes people just feel like they're worthless, and abusers do that on purpose to gain control over their victims, where they're like, you're not going to be anything without me, you know? And the fact that she felt so strongly and so poorly about this relationship that she almost took her own life. I mean, think about all the music we almost didn't have.
Yeah.
And thankfully, she was able to survive that attempt and go on to have such a great career and be an independent, strong woman.
Yeah, and another thing that I think is really amazing about Tina Turner is that she got into the industry as who she is. Kind of a little bit, like, not, she wasn't old. I want to be very clear. I am not saying that she was old, because she wasn't. She was like 40. But that's a lot later in life than most stars tend to emerge. And so it's really cool to me that this older black woman was able to be so successful. I mean, she is one of the best-selling artists of all time. Mm-hmm. Right now, it stands at more than 200 million records have been sold.
And 12 Grammy Awards,
12 Grammys, and she is sometimes hailed as the queen of rock and roll, which is a hell of a title. Like, that is quite a throne to be sitting on, you know what I mean? Like, and I really think that it's amazing to hear a story like that, and I think it gives hope, I mean, I've never been in an abusive relationship, thankfully. That's a terrible, terrible thing to have to go through. But one of my really close friends in high school suffered through one, and I remember just the absolute toll it takes, and especially like when you love the person and you trust them and you don't think that they're gonna hurt you and they continue to hurt you. Like, it does a number on your mental health and your emotional well-being, and the fact that she was able to come back from that and do so many amazing things with her life and continue to this day to do amazing things.
And I think her particular case was complexified just because Ike was so influential in her career. Mm-hmm. And I think not only was there that I love you and you're hurting me and that's terrible type of feeling, but also the fact that, like, she probably worried at a very young age of, like, if I remove myself from this person, will my career derail? Yeah. Will I still have the same type of success?
And that's a very real thing, especially for women in the music industry specifically. Actually, in any entertainment industry. If anything, like the whole Harvey Weinstein expose that occurred almost 2 years ago now, very, very revealing. And by the way, this is something that women has known was going on for years, but I'm glad that it's finally come to the attention of the general public. I remember my stepdad was particularly surprised by a lot of the Me Too stuff that came out. You know, he's more conservative, but he's not a misogynist by any measure. I wouldn't go so far as to say that. And so I would say, like, he was just genuinely shocked. And I think a lot of men, actually a lot of people, just have no idea that this kind of thing happens. And I remember when all of this was happening, I was sitting in my government class, you know, in high school, and we were going around, and every single girl, and a girl, not woman, we were 16, 17 years old, every single girl in that class had a story, you know, sometime that they were harassed or something. You know, one girl was talking about it when she was 12 years old. She was being harassed by college-age men at the beach, you know what I mean? And it's just, and my mom, you know, was telling my stepdad, yeah, you know, like, I had a superior at work come in and, like, give me a massage, and, like, didn't understand why that was an inappropriate thing to do.
And that's what upset me the most about the controversy around that recent Gillette commercial that came out, where it's like, men can do better, where men were, like, throwing tantrums, and I'm going to call it that. They were throwing tantrums online because they're like, oh, you know, this is hurting masculinity. And it's like, I think a lot of men don't think that toxic masculinity and masculinity are different, or that toxic masculinity exists because they can't see the difference.
Yeah.
But people who are affected negatively by toxic masculinity, especially women, very much can see it. And I think what men need to do, generally speaking, I know a lot of guys are obviously, you know, not toxic and are very conscious about their actions and know when to stop. But men who are generally toxic, I think they need to take a step back and listen and say, you know, obviously I'm perceiving my behavior differently than someone else's. And it's always, you know, I think I hate to say this, it's kind of very bittersweet. There's a Louis C.K. quote, I know, but it's like, you don't get to decide how someone else feels when you say something to them or something along those lines.
Which is a great quote.
But it's like, Louis C.K., really? An interesting point there, bud. But
yeah. No, and what I always think about is, like, actually, wait, I just lost my train of thought. I had, like, a really profound, not profound, but, like, intelligent response to that, but I lost it. I genuinely don't remember what I was going to talk about. So in that case, we're going to move on. Hopefully I remember. And we're going to go ahead.
When a person tells you that you hurt them, you didn't get to decide that you didn't. That's the quote, which I think is a great quote, but yikes.
That is, I mean, yes. Unfortunately, that's, you know, ouch. But okay, so here is Tina Turner's cover?
No, I think it was for her.
Oh, it was for her. Okay, so here's Tina Turner's Rock Me Baby.
Hey. Woo! Rock me, baby. Rock me all night long. I said I want you to rock me, baby. Rock me all night long. I want you to rock me like my back ain't got no bones. Then I want you to roll me, daddy, like you roll your flower dough. Want you to roll me, daddy, like you roll your flower dough. I want you to roll me till I won't no more. And I said, when you see me coming, go get your rocking chair. When you see me coming, go get your rocking chair. I want you to rock me on way from here.
Also, can't remember what she wanted
I
to say.
remembered what I was going to say. So, on the topic of the Gillette ad, I think it's very ironic whenever people talk about how easily, I'm going to use a word here that I don't particularly like because I feel like it's misused quite a bit, but triggered. I don't like using that word, not because, like, you know, triggered is a very serious psychological word that has kind of been co-opted by some people to kind of basically dismiss somebody else's argument, and I don't really like that. I don't like that people who actually have trauma and like have that their things have been delegitimized. Hello, that's not English.
Delegitimized.
Yes, thank you. That by the memes, but either way, I think it's really ironic when people talk about how easily like feminists, right, or whatever, like special snowflakes are triggered, and that Gillette drops an ad that's like, maybe men should try and respect women, and every man
I'm gonna flush my
loses
Gillette
their
shaver down the toilet, and I'm gonna take a picture of it and then send it to Gillette just so they know how upset I am.
That kind of mentality reminds me of a story that I have. I worked in a pizzeria for almost 3 years, which is a long time to work in a pizzeria.
Anywhere, yeah.
I mean, anywhere, but especially in a minimum wage job at a pizzeria. Because in New Jersey, you only have 2 minimum wage options. You can work in a pizzeria, or you can work at the mall. That's like it. That's your 2 options.
Valid.
Those are your choices. Anyway, so I was working in this pizzeria, and there was this guy. I answered the phones. That was my job. You know when you call to order a pizza, and somebody's like, "Hi, this is Joe's. What can I get for you?" That was me. I did that. I answered the phones. And so pick up the phone once, and I said, "Hi, Calabria," which is the name of the place that I worked. And the guy on the phone goes, "My pizza's burnt." And I was like, great. This is the start to a great phone call. And I was like, I'm so sorry to hear that. If you would like, you can give us with this pizza, and we'll bring you a new one, and in exchange for the old pizza. Because 9 times out of 10, when somebody complains that their pizza's burnt, it's not actually burnt. They just want a free pizza. Okay?
That's
but
the tea. That's the restaurant industry
whatever.
tea.
It's true. It's true. Customers are terrible. You work in a restaurant.
I did,
You know
yes.
this. Please be respectful towards restaurant workers. We do not get paid enough to deal with rude people. We really just don't. But anyway, so my pizza's burnt. This guy's pizza's burnt. I'm like, I'm so sorry. And he says, "Oh, I can't give you the old one." Okay. Why can't you give me the old one, sir? He says, "Well, I ate 4 of the slices."
Well, then I guess it wasn't that bad, no, was
And
it?
I was like, well, if you ate the pizza, I can't send you a new one because you ate the pizza. And he said, "But it's burnt." And I was like, well, I'm sorry, but we can't just send you a new pizza if you already ate the one that we gave you. And he said, "Would you like me to send you a picture of how burnt this pizza is? I was hungry. That's why I ate it. I want a new pizza." Sir.
That's your own fault.
I can't send you a new pizza. He said, "I want to speak to the manager."
That's the best.
Okay.
That's the best thing they can
So
say.
I
though.
hand it to my manager. This guy's name is Gerard. He's like 23. He does not care. He does not care at all. This guy picks up, gets on the phone, starts off the same way. "My pizza's burnt." Manager goes through the exact same things that I just said, got to the same conclusion, which is, you ate the pizza, we can't send you a new one. And he's like, "Well, then I'm going to come over there and throw this pizza in your face, and I'm going to write an angry review on Facebook about this restaurant, and none of my friends are going to eat there again." And my manager was just like, "Okay, sir, you do that."
Have
End
a great
of
rest of your
phone
day.
call.
It's pizza. You're really gonna get that upset and channel
It's
that much
pizza.
energy
Not
into
only is
pizza.
it only just pizza, a $14 large pizza, not a huge expense. Okay, it's just pizza, and beyond that, you ate half of it. We can't send you a new one. And I always think it's like, whenever people post on social media, like angrily about brands or food or anything, and they're like, "This was terrible, this is a weird thing," like people destroying stuff and whatever. It's like, what are you doing? What difference do you think that's going to make exactly? Like, what are you hoping to accomplish? It's just
It's funny because there's this restaurant. I can't remember the name of it. It's in not the Luxor, but the Excalibur, in Las Vegas. Uh, Hold on a second. I'm gonna look it up. But basically, the whole point of the restaurant is that you go there. It's called Dick's Last Resort, and it's a crappy dive bar where basically. Servers are paid to insult you, and they give you hats with insults on them made of paper that you wear for the entirety of your meal. And the whole point is that they treat you like crap, and you go there because it's funny, because the roasts are hilarious. It's the same reason why people go to comedy drag shows. It's the same appeal. Or like a Joan Rivers when she was alive. Like, same concept. Anyway, and I can't tell you how many Yelp reviews of that restaurant I've read where people, like, you get old people, they're like, oh, I came in here with my wife to have a good time with the Excalibur, and they were rude to me, and they gave me terrible service, and the food was bad. It's like, oh, really, Jonathan? Maybe that was the point. But then you're also like, well, maybe they're just, like, at a really high level of satire, and they're insulting them back to, like, make fun of them insulting them, and you're just like, I don't even know if it's real or not. But
high
like,
levels of satire.
but like, if you're really like insulting that type of restaurant, what are you doing with your time?
Truly, the internet has reached the peak of like, we don't know what's irony or not anymore. We just don't know. Like, I follow someone on Twitter who like sometimes occasionally will tweet about how they think the one slur from the 2012 Lorax movie is hot, and I have no idea whether or not they're joking.
Because there were some people that genuinely did think that.
I have no idea if they're like memeing and they're like, haha, look at this this Bezos-like character in a fictional media who has black hair, he's hot, or if like they're being serious, because I just don't know. And at this point, I am afraid to ask.
It's too far. But anyway, we're going to talk about Etta James, who is the next artist we're playing. And I love Etta James. And I want to say, I don't know, have you seen the film Cadillac Records, Kim?
I have not.
So Cadillac Records is about chess records. I'm trying to pull up an article that I found about it. Hold on a second. Yes, it's a biographical drama film. And it's basically about this thing that happened. It was a music record place in the 60s that signed exclusively black artists, even though it was started by two white guys who were of Jewish descent. And in the film, Etta James is depicted, but she's actually depicted by Beyonce, which is really cool. And I think
really
anytime
cool.
you're portrayed by Beyonce, it really goes to show how iconic of a person you are, because, you know, Beyonce is not just going to, you know, act as anybody in a movie.
Also,
No, ma'am.
I'd just like to point out that we had 7 songs planned for today, and as there are now 15 minutes left on our time slot, we've been through 2 of them.
2.
I swear this is a music show, but Taylor and I would make great talk show hosts. I'm just saying.
It's like more of a podcast at this point.
It
It's
really,
just
it
us.
really has kind of become a podcast. So I hope that our personalities are at least somewhat entertaining.
I know, but it is really good. So if you get a chance, watch Cadillac Records.
I'm gonna have to watch
It has
that now.
Adrian Brody in it, and it portrays Chuck Berry. Muddy Waters is featured in it, Howlin' Wolf, so it kind of talks about like that era, kind of like the transition from like that kind of soulful R&B into more of what we would consider like classic rock and roll.
It sounds like a great movie.
Yeah.
I love that. All right, well, here is Etta James' Fool That I Am.
There's a really beautiful cover of that song as well, done by Adele from earlier in her career, and it's also really good. So if you enjoyed that song and you enjoy Etta James in general, you'll love that cover as
Adele
well.
has a lot of really good covers that kind of fly under the radar. Actually, the first I'm a pretty big Bob Dylan fan, which is a
Oh my gosh,
super
I
weird
knew you were
thing.
gonna bring this up. Yeah.
I'm sorry. This is I'm
It's good,
I'm
though.
a pretty big Bob Dylan fan, which is funny because I didn't actually know who Bob Dylan was until like 3 years ago. And then I realized that I knew most of his songs because he's probably the most covered artist ever, because he is an amazing songwriter with like a subpar voice. But
Well,
they
he
let him
can't sing,
they
yeah.
let him sing because of how incredible of a songwriter he was. And so I'm sure even if you're not familiar with Bob Dylan, you've probably heard the songs Knockin' on Heaven's Door. That's the really big one that has a lot of covers. There's more that my mind is blanking. But the one that I really like is Adele's cover of Make You Feel My Love, which is a Bob Dylan song. And Adele's cover it's so beautiful.
She like makes it her song.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
It's so good. And as somebody, who I really like this style of music, if that makes sense. You were talking about the transition from R&B to rock, and that particular little segment of music history has produced some of like my favorite songs. So I really like that style, and I feel like it's in that vein. And Adele kind of replicates a lot of that. And so I don't know. I'm a fan.
And I grew up loving Adele just for the same reason. Like, I think she's one of the very few artists that can really insert pain into her voice. And I love artists like that. And maybe she was inspired by Etta James. I wouldn't be surprised.
When Adele came around, it wasn't very popular for women in pop to kind of have like that deeper, more soulful voice. And I feel like she kind of like made it cool again. So
It was
I
a
have
renaissance.
a lot of respect for her.
But speaking of very sexy voiced women as well, is Donna Summer, who we're going to play next. We're going to play her very popular, wonderful song, Hot Stuff, because we couldn't play Love to Love You Baby and listen to 7 minutes of moaning, which is a good old time. I mean, if we were in,
The first time I heard Love
Club.
to Love You Baby on the radio, I was in the car with my dad and my 2 younger siblings, and it was
no.
just on the radio, and my dad did not turn it off. I was very uncomfortable. I did not know what I was listening
I do know that something weird is that it was produced by this like really creepy, almost kind of like German producer guy, and like Donna was really shy to record this because they wanted something kind of sexy and for the clubs, for people moving and jamming in the clubs at that time. What is it, Club 74 was the big one from the 70s. People did cocaine in and like rode in on white horses.
Most clubs in the 70s involved people doing cocaine. I don't know. Was that in New York? Is that what you're
Yeah.
asking me? I have no idea. I know
Okay.
nothing about the old clubs from New York City because I was not alive.
Anyway, that they were writing this record for the intent of it being played in these crazy clubs in the 70s, and they turned off all the lights in this recording studio and had Donna Summer basically in there by herself, just moaning to herself for 7 minutes, and they made out of it Love to Love You Baby. So good for her. And also, I also wanted to bring up the fact that her whole singing career almost started as like a coincidence. Like it was kind of like triggered by a coincidence because when she was 10, she was like she filled in for someone at her church that wasn't there, that was supposed to sing. And that's kind of what started her like journey into taking herself more seriously as a singer. So it's like, wow, coincidences, amazing.
Yeah, really.
Life really be like that sometimes.
It's those kinds of things that almost like make you want to believe in like a higher power having a plan, because you're like, wow, that just worked out so beautifully, almost.
And then 30 years later, she was moaning in a studio by herself.
In a studio
so.
by herself for 7 minutes. But you know what? Here is Hot Stuff by Donna Summer.
So I did want to say, as a correction, it's Studio 54 is the name of the club that we were referring to.
And the other really big one is called the Limelight, according to my mother. I don't know. My mother lived in New Jersey in the 70s and the 80s, so I'm just going to take her word for that one.
But it's interesting because I was reading this this article about it. It says, how all of this was financed might be the best Studio 54 story of all. When the IRS shut things down in 1979, it was because they'd found garbage bags of money and drugs stashed throughout the club. Isn't that just the most 70s thing you've ever heard of? That is what disco is. That is peak disco. It's just drugs and cash stashed in the walls of the club.
That's...
And Andy Warhol was there.
And
David
Andy
Bowie.
Warhol was there. That is the pinnacle of the 70s. The only thing that can make that more 70s if both Andy Warhol and Jim Morrison were there. Just both of them.
Yes,
you know?
unfortunately, Jim Morrison was dead long before this club, I think, even existed. So.
No, he was alive in the 70s.
No, he died in the early 70s.
Yeah, but this club existed
I guess
for a
that's
while.
True. That's true.
He was not long dead, certainly.
Fair
I don't know
enough.
when this club was founded or the exact year that Jim Morrison died, but I'm pretty sure
I
that
think it
for,
was
like,
more late 70s because it was more like disco era, and that was way after
okay,
Jim Morrison
you're right.
was alive.
I mean, not way after, but like a little bit. You're right. I'm sorry.
You're good.
I take it back.
It's all good. I didn't know
I
either.
don't know anything, actually.
I'm just
So,
talking heads.
Just talking heads. I mean, like, that is a very accurate assessment
Of who we are as
at
people.
this point. So we're wrapping up the show now. We've run out of time. It is 3 p.m. on the dot. Actually, it's 3 p.m. and 15 seconds, according to this little clock on the Mac computer in the studio here. But real quick, I just want Taylor to talk about a wonderful Twitter experience that she had.
So I saw something on my timeline related to Webkins. I tweeted out that when I was 7, I read a magazine where I saw a guy with 100 Webkins, a kid, and I was like, wow, that kid's a legend, and he's just assimilating in a normal society, and like he could be, like, you could know him and you wouldn't know because he was like this infamous dude. And the official Webkins account retweeted me and liked me, and then I was like, oh my gosh, Webkins retweeted me, I'm crying. Then they liked that. Then I started to get into this whole discourse about this magazine called Plushie Pals, which used to talk about Webkins and like Webkins collectors and other people who collected these plushies. And then Dr. Quack himself, for those of you who know Webkins, the mayor of the Webkins town followed me.
Dr. Quack was
and
not
liked
the
me.
mayor. He was the official veterinarian.
I thought they said he was the veteran.
No, Miss
hold
Birdie
on.
was the mayor.
Listen. I'm reading this. I'm going back on Twitter.
Miss
I know
Birdie.
he was the doctor because you'd go to him when your Webkin was
I
sick.
swear Miss Birdie is the mayor of Webkins.
Oh, gosh. Oh, it says official Webkins account for the former mayor of Kinsville and clinic physician.
He's the former mayor.
Ferd. Okay.
So maybe Miss Birdie is the current mayor. I don't know. I just remember Miss
There's too
Birdie
much
like
lore.
greeted you. There is
Yeah.
too much Webkins lore. I don't remember it. What I just think is funny. What I really want to do is try to log into my Webkins account. I remember my username. I do not remember my password. But what I really want to do is just go in. And I know my mom is listening to this right now, so it's totally going to ruin my plan. But I really want to go in because I was 8 years old when I made this account. So it's linked to my mom's email because I didn't have an email because I was 8. And I really just want to go in and like click like forgot my password and like just send an email. And so my mom gets an email that just says, you reset your Webkins password 10 years later. No context. I mean, yeah, you know. But yeah.
We all have dreams.
We all
mine's
have dreams.
lost
I had a lot of
forever.
Webkins. So I miss them.
And I had
I hope they're
17.
doing okay. I hope they didn't like die.
Yeah, wherever they are, they're in a good place. But thank you so much. I'm Taylor Lane, as always.
I'm Kim.
And this has been Vixen Voices from the Bill Austin Studio in downtown Phoenix on Blaze Radio and blazeradioonline.com. Have a great rest of your day.
Newt.